season 2 of the Pat and JT podcast.
Oh man, I'm here at last. The best time, always gonna be the best. Come on! Well, all right.
Our website, patandjt.com, or you can go to Hurrdat Media and just click through. I don't even know what. It's like
on
Hurrdat Media.
You click on the network.
There, that's what it is.
It's,
And
it's
then
the first tab. Click on that, and it takes you to where all the shows are.
Yeah.
And you can see all the shows that are on the network. Which, by the way, it's not. We're constantly adding to the website because we actually are now at about 40 shows.
40, yeah, pretty awesome.
It's really exciting.
One of those being the Van D podcast, and today is the day that Van D he proposed to his girlfriend Jaquel as he's recording his podcast last week, and the episode is live today. The video's out there today. She was very surprised. He was smooth as silk.
It was a great episode.
Big goosies
to
all
begin
day.
with, but then it ended with the surprise.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So super. And then there's going to be more video dropping as well, but you can watch the entire episode. Also, he's got that up. Go to his website, vandeed.com, if you want to look at it there too. You can check it out there.
It was super cool.
Sometimes we get lucky and we have a guest on our episodes. And we're always watching for either people we know or people doing things in the community or just those interesting stories, just like people that are part of our circle, I guess, really. Mm-hmm. And our guest today is Brandon McDermott. Hi, Brandon. How you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you for coming on our episode.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
You bet. Brandon, first, why don't you go ahead? You can probably do a much better job of doing introductions for yourself. But you've got a really cool job that you've had for a number of years, and we've known. I remember you from years ago. That's the thing. We kind of crossed paths.
We did. Well, first of all, I want to say it's such a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. Growing up, not to date you two, but
oh God, here we go. Thanks for being on, Brandon.
Okay, bye.
We'll talk to you later.
And we're done. No,
and that's it.
But growing up in my early years of interning at NRG Media and Weight Radio years and years ago, I definitely came in contact with you guys, and I always loved the great things you do, and the chemistry you two have is something that is irreplacable. So you guys are terrific.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I really
Brandon.
appreciate that. And you continued on in broadcasting too.
Well, I worked full-time from 18 to 25 in a different industry. I worked in customer service at a company in Omaha called DTN, and got the burn to get back into radio and quit a full-time job with benefits to become an unpaid intern at a public radio station.
That's
Omaha.
what radio idiots like us do.
We can't help ourselves.
We quit the sheer thing for like the maybe a small little chance. That's what we do.
All these people who are like, I want to do what you do. How do I do it? Well, you got to quit and try to volunteer. Luckily, they don't have unpaid internships much anymore.
Yeah.
But that's what it's about. But I host a statewide radio show called Morning Edition. It's NPR's national show, but here in the member station in Nebraska, there's 14 stations across the state, headquartered, if you can say that, out of Lincoln. And I do that, and my other foot is in the reporting world. So part of my job is hosting, the other part's reporting.
And that's all with NAT, correct?
That is correct.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Good for you. Seriously, that's really awesome. The reason why you pop back up in our circle is because of all things, it's not very often that I browse LinkedIn, but since we were changing companies, we were updating some things. And so I was kind of just like checking out some other stuff. And you know how it is when you fall in any website where you can kind of cruise and you forget where you are and you go somewhere else. And you popped up in my timeline because you had a book coming out, and I had no idea. And I was like, we've got to have him come in to talk about this. So I'm just going to let you kind of lead the way, if you will. The book's called Abandoned Brandon, and it's available everywhere books are sold, as they say. But I actually been watching the video of chapter 1. It's wow. I mean, seriously, go right ahead and tell. I'm floored.
Well, no, and I appreciate you giving us me a chance and letting me come here and tell the story. That's what this whole thing's been about. Anybody who writes a book knows when you write your first one, unless you're connected with somebody really big and you got a huge platform, you're not in it to make money. You're in it to tell your story and to get it out there. And that's certainly what we've done. But, born and raised in Omaha, went to 11 public schools in 13 years and graduated from Benson High School. And in and out of foster care as a child, abusive father in every way you can imagine. And mother was a drug addict. And my father killed his girlfriend in front of me when I was 13.
Holy cow! What? I mean, wait a second.
That's a lot right there.
I mean, you could stop right there, and you could have an entire book about how seeing that at 13 can change the trajectory of your life.
Exactly. And you're exactly right. There's definitely more books out there, more books in here, I should say.
Yeah.
Man.
But no, it's a story about facing all of those things, because you hear the stats. You know, if a student or a child grows up with a parent incarcerated or in poverty or with drug addiction in the family or in foster care, then they're more likely to be in any of those have any of those things happen to them. A child in foster care, be in prison, be a drug addict, and grow up and they themselves experience poverty as they age. I had all four, and somehow made it out the other end. And I would say it's grit, determination, and just very great surrogates along the way.
Honestly, it is inspirational because of that you see. Okay, you're one of the stories that you want people to see, to look up to look to. This can be done. It can be done. Painful though, still.
You know, you're definitely right. And I mean, that's the thing is if I can show people who've experienced any sort of trauma in their life, whether it's childhood trauma like I've experienced, or even something different completely like divorce, or they're going through a drug recovery, or they're trying to lose weight, or whatever it is, that they have within themselves everything they need to possess to overcome or to cope with and deal with who they are and accept who they are and be a great person and offer something back to the world that's better than what they got.
So Brandon, I know, I'm sure everybody's thinking this. I am thinking this. And it's in the book, I'm sure. But I don't mean to be blunt, but how did was it your stepfather?
It's dad.
Your dad killed your stepmother? How
girlfriend.
Your dad killed your dad's his girlfriend in front of you. How did that happen? How did that go down?
Well, it's a long story. I'll explain in the book, but I'll definitely explain it here. So, my father, after my mother and father got divorced, my father became a womanizer, and the relationships didn't last long, and the women would realize who he was pretty quickly and then run off, but couldn't get too far from my father. My father was a stalker, and he had, I believe currently he has got 4 lifetime protection orders out against him.
Oh my gosh.
But when I was a young kid,
so he's not in prison. He's out.
Nope. He's out as far as I've known. I haven't spoken to him in 8 years, but as far as last I heard, he was out. I don't think he's in prison. But he would take me on what he called these stalking trips, and we would go to his girlfriend's house.
He called them stalking trips, like out loud called them stalking trips.
Yes.
What?
And so it would literally start with hey bud, let's go gas station, get a couple Pepsis, and we drive around and listening to CDs and music that he enjoyed, and we would drive around his girlfriend's apartment or around his girlfriend's job. He would have me get out of the car and go check her windows and go check her car and go check her mail and see if there's anything available for him to glean anything from, to see what she's doing, how she's living, what's going on. Anyway, long story short, he got a new girlfriend when I was 13, and they were together at the time, but they got in a big argument, which the argument's all explained in detail in the book, but ended up pushing her down a flight of stairs in a rush to get his clothes, because she was kicking us out of his house at the time. After this argument, they were rushing downstairs because the master bedroom was in the basement. They were rushing downstairs to get his things, and he wanted to be the person to get the things. She wanted to be the person to kick him out. It was just a kind of a silly, stupid argument. And he shoved her both hands down the stairs, and I was there in the room with him. And for a long time, blamed myself for everything that had happened. I could have yelled out, "Hey dad, no," all this.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But she didn't die right away. She lived for 10 days, and because of massive blood on the brain and a fractured skull and brain swelling, her family decided to pull the plug. And this was August of 1999.
And that's when you're 13, man. That's a lot to take in when you're 13.
It is. But I have to say too, just from what I have read so far, I haven't read the whole thing, read and seen, a lot happened before that, you were 13. It was tumultuous. I mean, from the start almost, right?
Very much so. And that's really what the book spells out of, there was this one incident that happened that was huge and was the reckoning of my childhood, that really was the point, as you brought up, that was going to be the part where I said, I'm going to go one way or the other. And it certainly happened that way. But before that, I was in foster care before that, because my father abused my sisters and I. And when I was 7 and 8, And there was a custody battle between my mother and my father, and you know how that goes. And so, I mean, there was a lot to it, and it's a very a lot to get into in a short amount of time. But basically, we were jumping around, and we were being pulled in every which direction by both my mother and my father, being played against the other by both sides, and all that, and abuse and drugs, and you name it. It's all in the book.
How are your sisters doing?
They're doing all right. One of my middle sister, who I'm a little closer with, she's completely in the same ballpark that I'm in, with realizing who my parents are, and that she doesn't want anything to do with them, and doesn't want them to be a part of her life at all. My other sister, I don't really keep close contact with. But she's a little closer to my parents, and I think that has a little bit to do with it. She was a little young when everything went down, so she doesn't quite remember firsthand, and so it's more of these are still our parents kind of a thing. Well, yes, they're still our parents, but you understand that not all, just because somebody is your parent doesn't mean that you have to give them the world.
That has to be such a hard realization, because everybody wants, no matter what situation you're in, it's your mom or your dad.
You romanticize your memories, and
you
on
do.
top of it.
And to come to that point where you can say out loud, you are my mom or my dad, whatever, but you are not a good person. I'm not, I can't have you in my life. I can't have you influencing my kids, or, whatever it is. That's a hard place to get to.
Right. And to do it not from a place of anger.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right, both of you. And what I would say is one of the things I came to realize when putting the book together was how much, and I hate when people say this, but how much society pushes on us. It's good for the person who's being abused in a domestic relationship to leave the other person, and rightfully so. But when it comes to being your parents, in the end of the day, it's still your mom and dad. It's still your mom. You still have to take care of them, right? And for me, it was no. That's not the case. It's not that at all. There are people out there who choose to be good or bad, and choose to fall into certain lifestyles, and you don't have to be a part of that, and you certainly don't have to put the people that you love around that either.
What about other family members? Did you have extended family nearby?
Aunts and uncles. My father was he was the youngest child out of 4, and the next oldest child, his next oldest sibling, was 12 or 13 years older than he was. Wow. And so I kind of he grew up with his cousins as his brothers and sisters, basically. And a lot of those people, a lot of those friends and family, aunts and uncles and cousins. Sure, we were close when grandma and grandpa were around, my paternal grandparents. But, as they passed, the families branch out and branch off. And I think to answer the next part of the question, it would be, I've gotten some good feedback from family members, and I've gotten some feedback, which is also spelled out in the book, from family members of, why are you trying to tell the family's dirty laundry?
That's exactly where I was going. Exactly where I was going. I was wondering about that. How that went.
So dealing with that, it's tough to hear that, because in the end, I came to realize that I am the family's dirty laundry. That you're
not. It's the situation was. Yeah. The stories you're telling are. So that's a lot of pressure, man. Yeah. Yep.
And I wanted to get the story out there. I wanted to tell people, because it's a part of who I am. I was short story. I went to school at UNO. I was somewhat of an non-traditional student in my mid-20s, and won a scholarship award, and was chosen to give the acceptance speech on behalf of the UNO winners at the Omaha Press Club.
Nice.
And was writing this speech, and showed it to one of my professors at UNO, and she says, "Brandon, do you really want to be remembered as that boy who was abused?" And I said to myself, and I think I said to her, I am that boy, and I always will be.
Yeah, that's
a terrible thing to say.
True. It's like, but that's who I am. That's how you remember.
Right. And that's how you became who you are.
That's the real.
That's terrible.
The like silver lining of this. I don't know, and I don't know what it was that helped you through this. I got to ask. Were there role models? Were there people who stepped in kind of as a support system, or as a replacement, for the mom and dad role ever?
All along the way. And I think as a person who grew up in 11 different public schools, and different foster cares and different halfway homes and youth groups or youth homes and shelters, I gleaned towards people who I saw a paternalistic or maternalistic role in. And so whether it was, teachers at Benson High School, because that was the one school I went there for 4 years. And so I got actually 4 years of stability, which was amazing. And there were several teachers at Benson that helped me out along the way, including a teacher my junior year. We were poor. My father was in prison and my mother, we were dirt poor. He paid for me to go to junior prom, paid for my tuxedo, paid for my ticket for prom, paid for me to take the girl out to dinner. That's awesome. And so, there were things like that, took me to my first Husker game. My teacher did. So there were teachers along the way that saw what I was going through, understood my story, and tried to help and put a hand out as much as possible to kind of be light the fire under me to be good.
If I can ask you, when you mentioned that 4 years at Benson, that had to happen right after your dad and the girlfriend, right?
Yep. So when I was, 14 to 18, so right after, exactly.
So I'm assuming then you were living with someone else because he's in prison.
Yep. So when everything happened with my dad, I went to when we were in foster care the first time at 7 and 8, my sisters and I got taken away from my father. My father had custody of us after they divorced. And then my mother gained custody of all three of us at age 8. And by the time we were living in a one-room apartment, a studio apartment with my mother, stepfather, my two sisters, myself, and my dog.
And my dog.
Wow. I was sleeping on the floor. Yeah. So, when I was getting to the age of reason, I guess, growing up and getting to puberty, my mother and father decided, thank goodness, I guess, that I would move in with my father, who lived at my grandparents' house. So it was actually an upgrade. We had food and things to do and money and stuff like that, at least spendable income. So my father had custody of me at that time. So when everything happened with my father killing his girlfriend, I went to a youth home until a foster family would accept me into their home. And then after that,
did your grandparents did you not want to stay with your grandparents?
So it was a big deal. I wanted to stay with my grandparents, but they were worried. The state was worried my father would come out and get me again. He technically kidnapped me from school after his girlfriend died.
Wow.
He went up to school and took me out of class without signing me out. And so they were assuming, because everything that had happened beforehand, 2 weeks before, he broke my nose. It made the paper because my mother had called the police about it, saying my dad was going to cut me up into 1,000 pieces and nobody would ever find me. This is all spelled out in the Omaha World Herald, and I spell it out a little bit in the book back in August of '99. And this all came to become news when my father killed his girlfriend, obviously.
Right.
But so the detectives knew about this, and they didn't want my father getting out and coming to take care of me because I had, quote unquote, turned him in and told the truth. And so,
wow.
And so this is where the name comes from, Abandoned Brandon. It comes from when I told the truth about everything that had happened. He wrote me a letter from prison calling me Abandoned Brandon because I abandoned him. I turned him in. So it's not when you read the title of the book, you think to yourself, what is Brandon? Was he abandoned? No. It's about my father. But I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place there.
You're fine.
Anyway, so my mother had to prove to the state that she could get custody of me back. And once she did that, I was 14. She had to get a place to live, which had enough rooms. You need 2 rooms for 3 children in the state of Nebraska. I think it's still the same. And so she got a house that she could rent and got custody of me back in May of 2000. And just before school started my freshman year. But yeah, so the state wouldn't allow me to talk to my grandparents at all because my grandparents, they were worried were going to get my dad out of jail before the trial and something was going to happen to me, kind of a thing. So I wasn't even able to talk to my grandparents.
So it's to protect you. The state was trying to protect you in their best way they thought possible. Okay.
Wow.
I completely understand that. So trust, there's no hatred towards the state.
But but at first blush, when you think about it, you're like, well, man, we just stay in the house. You got food, you get stability. But I completely understand that.
And as a 13-year-old, it was, what did I do? Why am I being punished because of all this? And so I internalized a lot of that blame for everything that had happened. And so I took a lot of that on as a 13-year-old of, if I would have just stood up and said something, it could have, he wouldn't have pushed her. But then I think back now and think to myself, man, I probably made it out of my childhood by a cat's whisker, because that could have easily been me.
Honestly, I mean, you really, because you didn't want to get in his path. And obviously it had other things happened along the way that probably solidified that, because like you're talking about having a broken nose, and I can't even imagine. Now, the foster system itself, so that's another thing. I mean, talk about another book. There's another book too. Knowing the foster system from the inside out. At that age, when you were in was it? It had to be difficult because I'm sure I see. You see the different entities that are trying to find homes for children, especially when they're young boys or even young girls. They get to be around 13, 14 years old. It gets a little hard.
It definitely does, and you hit it on the head. When I was 7 and 8, I still communicate with my first foster mother. I call her mom and send her,
yes,
Mother's Day gifts and stuff like that. In fact, my wife's expecting our first child here in 2 weeks, and going to be sending her pictures and going to be visiting her once COVID kind of calms down and stuff. But my second track into foster care was terrible. We were treated like Cinderella. I mean, we were the paycheck for this family that we were expected to cook and clean and walk to the store for groceries and serve them dinner. And I mean,
okay. See, that's what I was wondering about is, I guess is you hear those stories about those kind of foster families that take the kids in so they get the paychecks like you were saying, but they make the kids do all the work, and then that story kind of gets pushed aside because there are very good people who work in the foster system, but there are very bad people who take advantage of the process.
Very much so. And I don't want to say that it's, bad apples. And what I experienced is only one example, but I saw both sides of it. I saw when I went for the first time, when I was 7 years old, we brushed our teeth for the first time. We went to dinner as a family, ate at the dinner table for the first time. We had 3 meals a day for the first time, went to church for the first time. I went to Little League Baseball for the first time. So we did all these things as a family that I never understood and probably pushed against because I wasn't able to accept and give back love at that young of an age. And at 13, I saw the opposite side of it, where we were treated as trash, and anything we got, whether it was clothes or toys for Christmas or anything, I was told before I left that you leave all of that here. What you got is mine, and you leave with what you came with. And I remember walking up to my foster mother, this second foster mother that when I was 13, who was no longer here. She's recently passed. And I said, my mother bought a house. I get to go home. And she says, Brandon, your mother didn't buy a house. Your mother will never buy a house. She's renting a house.
How awful.
And in fact, saying, Brandon, you're trash and you're always going to be trash. And so that's this thing I've kind of, my whole life has been fighting.
What is wrong with adults? What is wrong with people? Just in general, not just adults. What is wrong with people? Why would you say that to anybody, let alone a child?
When you see a movie like that, you think, they're just sensationalizing.
Right. Like that would never happen. Unbelievable.
Thank God for your first foster mom, though.
Right?
Amen. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. She's an angel. She and briefly, she's raised 4 of her own kids, and then not only raised and adopted 3 kids before me, but then took on 4 other babies who were born with drugs in their system, and has recently taken on a 40-year-old woman with Down syndrome who's deaf. And now has early onset Alzheimer's, and she's adopted her when her mother passed.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so this woman is my foster mother is just the most amazing person you'll ever meet.
I don't get it. That's for anybody that has even let's just say a child, how much work that is just to have a child, and then to imagine that times almost 10 compared to your, and then also now the adult children that she's bringing, adult
with disabilities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a miracle.
Again, there's the angel.
Right, a total angel.
I got to take it. Your book is out there, and you've got also you can get ebooks as well.
Yep. So Amazon.com. It's called Abandoned Brandon. I'm not sure when this is airing, but for today, until the end of today, it's going to be there's a special price on it. But we've marked it down from the original price. It's down to $14.99 for today. Only at $7.99, but $14.99 for the soft paperback, and $4.99 for the Kindle version, for the audio for the Kindle version. We'll be doing an audiobook at some point, which I will be voicing, as you heard the chapter 1 as a tease that we had.
And that's on abandonedbrandon.com, and you can see information on the book, and that video is there. It's like an 8-minute video. And it's in your voice. That's what's key, because that changes everything.
Oh man, yeah.
When you're listening to
voice actors.
And what he's talking about in that little sneak peek that's on abandonedbrandon.com, he hasn't talked about today. And what we've heard so far. This is another chapter, so to speak.
And if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, wherever, just in the show notes, we'll link to the book.
Absolutely. Amazon. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Holy cow, man. I was not expecting that. That's crazy.
You were more impressive than I thought. You know what I mean? It's it's really a testament. I know that you drew on the good. Thank God it stayed with you in order to come out on the other side. And congratulations on the baby.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity just to sit here and chat with you guys. Again, I grew up listening to you, and not just as a child, but as a teenager.
As an adult, as a 40-some-year-old adult who started listening to us.
No, not quite, but close.
Ish.
Not ish.
Dang it.
But I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and to tell this story and to help other people.
So
Absolutely.
NET Network, guys, if you get a chance. What time are you on in the mornings?
5 to 9 Central, Monday through Friday.
Excellent. Brandon McDermott, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you so much. You guys have a good day.
You got
You
it.
too.
Bye-bye. See ya. Holy cow. All right. So just click in the show notes. Buy the book, for God's sakes. That is
so
incredible.
inspiring and just eye-opening.
Yeah. You think you're having you had
Yeah.
a rough childhood.
Somebody
Wow.
set you straight.
Thanks, Brandon.
Pat and JT Podcast, a Hurrdat Media Production.